So we've looked at conformity before, and it's just a reminder that there is an interview with Zimbardo on the media server where he talks about his experiment and conformity and things like that on there. So after conformity, we're going to look at obedience, and what you need to know about in terms of obedience is a study by Stanley Milgram. So there are many clips of this online. It's Stanley Milgram's experiment. There's a typo there in the one that you can see on YouTube. It's Milgram. And it's worth watching some original footage from Milgram's experiment to see what went on. So there's some notes in your booklet that you can add to. And then there's lots of replications of Milgram as well. There's a good replication as part of Darren Brown's program called The Heist, where he goes through exactly the same procedure as Milgram did. So it's worth a look at that as well. There's also a more modern replication by a psychologist called Jerry Berger that you could look up. All of these clips can be found on YouTube. Okay, so in the back of your social booklet, so at the appendix at the back, is the original Milgram article. So the original article that Milgram wrote up after doing his study. There are some questions in your booklet on page 22 and 23 regarding the procedure and the findings of Milgram, so what Milgram did and what he found out. And can you answer those questions using the article in your booklet? This is the advert that went in the New Haven Times when Milgram was recruiting participants for his experiment. So they'd be paid $4.50 for a study on memory. Now, this isn't a memory topic, it's obedience. So there's a lack of informed consent in Milgram's study because he's deceiving his participants as to the nature of the study. But he's basically looking for men between the ages of 20 and 50 to take part in his experiment that will happen at Yale University. Now, what Milgram did was to tell the men that they were taking part in a study of memory. They arrived at the lab. They met an experimenter called Mr. Wallace. Mr. Williams, sorry. They met another participant called Mr. Wallace, but he was a stooge. They were allocated the role of a teacher, and they were told that they had to teach some word pairs. And if the learner got the word pair wrong, they had to give them an electric shock. So the electric shocks started at 15 volts and went up to 450 volts in 15-volt increments. Every time the learner got a question wrong, they had to give them an electric shock. And they were told that this was a study on memory and the effect of punishment on memory. So Milgram is using a sample of men and doing this experiment to see what percentage of them will give the full 450 volts. So that's how he's measuring obedience. So the dependent variable here is the number of people, the percentage of people that gave the full 450 volts. So there's some information on page 24 in your booklet and some questions for you to answer to look at what Milgram did. So this is around a 200-word summary of what happened, which goes through the procedure and the aim, and then it goes through the results. So from the 40 participants, 65% of them gave 450 volts, 100% of them gave 300 volts. So all the participants gave up to 300 volts, 65% gave 450 volts. You need to know those percentages. Milgram's study is named on the spec, and they do ask questions about it. This is a table of the amount of participants who stopped at each of the shock levels. These demonstrate quantitative findings. A common question from AQA is for you to either give quantitative findings from Milgram's study, so it's the percentages at each voltage, or qualitative findings, which is a description of the behaviour of the participants while they're taking part in a study. So nervous laughter, sweating, asking the experimenter whether they should go on, and so on. So all participants went to 300 volts, 65% went to 450 volts, and the participants showed extreme signs of distress. When they asked the experimenter, when they asked Mr. Williams to stop, Mr. Williams had some verbal prods. So he had a stock set of responses in which he would say the experiment requires that you continue, it's essential that you continue. He said he'd take responsibility for the learner. So Mr. Williams had a series of responses to give to the participant when they refused to give shocks any longer.